Tony Blair, he's got a new teaching course on faith and globalization beginning today at Yale University. Mr. Prime Minister, thank you so much for being with us.
It's my pleasure.
It's a fascinating course. I've noticed, I'm from a Southern Baptist family, I've noticed how evangelicals going to college now, much different from the ones that went to college 20, 30 years ago. Instead of talking about converting people, they're talking about feeding people, taking care of. It's a real Matthew 25 project. Talk about your course and what's happening in the world today.
Essentially, what we're trying to do is this. What's happening with globalization is that it's pushing people together. I mean, you can see this from the economic crisis that's going on at the moment. I mean, what happens in one part of the world affects what happens all over the world. So globalization is pushing people together. And the question is, does religious faith become a means of people living with each other peacefully, or does it become a force that pulls people apart? So the purpose of the course and the purpose of the foundation that I'm heading up is to try and get people of different faiths to live together, to understand each other, to respect each other.
And how do you do that?
I think you do it, first of all, by learning about each other, because where there's ignorance, there's fear, and where there's fear, there's conflict. And I think that, secondly, faith in action is really important. So what we're doing is we're joining the faiths together to try and take action, for example, in support of the United Nations Millennium Development Goals and the campaigns against malaria and to tackle global poverty. So to show the best of faith, the best face of faith, which is compassion and justice and helping people irrespective of what race or religion they are.
We've seen what the worst of faith can bring us, but explain where do you think we are 7 years after September 11th and the extremism of that date, which of course caused hatred on all sides? What's happened over the past 7 years? Are we closer or further apart?
Well, I'm afraid we're still in the middle of the struggle, because the other thing I do, as you know, is I'm the Middle East peace envoy out in the Middle East trying to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian issue. And I would say that in that region there is still a very fundamental struggle going on. So I think we're still in the midst of it, but I think that one part of solving it is to be able to say to people, whether they're a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew or a Hindu or a Buddhist, whatever, it is actually possible for us to know about each other and to learn to live with each other peacefully. And those people that want to sow hatred and division in our world are the people who want to take the world backwards. And faith can play a positive and progressive part in the 21st century. You talked about the Middle East peace process. The Bush administration, Condoleezza Rice, got engaged last year, said they were going to push very hard to do what they could to move Israelis and the Palestinians towards peace. Where are we today in that process? Well, it's challenging, particularly because you've now got a change in the Israeli political scene with the Prime Minister stepping down. On the other hand, there is some progress, and there is nothing more important to trying to bring peace to that region than for Israelis and Palestinians to be able to live side by side in peace with each other. So, however challenging it is, we've got no option but to carry on working at it, and that's what I will try to do and what we should do. But the interesting thing about being out in that region is that although the politics is very, very difficult, there is a dimension to all of this that is about religious faith. And so there, as well as in the rest of the world, if you can bring people of different faiths together, you've got a better chance of a more peaceful and more harmonious world.
Mr. Prime Minister, I'm sure you're aware of the real economic crisis facing our country, and I wonder, from the outside looking in, what you thought. We've been debating here what led to the crisis that we're dealing with now and what our government is trying to clean up. From the outside looking in, what do you think the fatal flaw was?
Well, I think essentially what has happened is that there have been these new financial instruments created and this really very high degree of borrowing that has now got to be unravelled. And I think the question is, how do you unravel it in a way that doesn't cause such instability and lack of confidence that the whole system freezes up? So what your government's trying to do at the moment, I think, is essentially right, which is to inject some confidence and stability back in the system by saying, look, the full power of government and the state will stand behind the financial system. In the short term, I think that is all that can be done. And then in the longer term, there's got to be that process of unraveling, and then the measures necessary to protect ordinary people and make sure this doesn't happen again.
Mr. Prime Minister, you've been very busy since you come to the United States, and of course, the most important stop that any politician or former politician can make is with Jon Stewart at The Daily Show.
Let's
show our audience a clip.
The important thing is, if you're dealing with someone as another leader, then you have to be able to deal with them on a basis that you regard them as straight to deal with.
Right.
And I did. And so I'm not going to speak.
Did he understand the time difference, or would he call you up like when he would call you up, would your phone ring and it would be like 4 a.m. and he'd be like, Tony, you got to turn on channel 4. There's a snake eating an egg. Is there anything like that?
That's like my children calling me Barnacle. They seriously call me at 4 a.m.
That's great.
That's funny.
Mike Barnacle.
Hey, Mr. Prime Minister, not to take this into a bridge abutment off of that pretty funny line there, but you're a recent convert to Catholicism. I'm a Catholic, and I'm wondering, because I figure Catholicism means we're in the forgiveness business, what did your conversion to Catholicism mean to you? Did it alter the way you looked at things as a public person in any way?
I think, for me personally, my wife is a Catholic and my children were brought up as Catholics, and I'd actually been going to Mass for about 20 years before I joined the Catholic Church, but I wasn't able to take communion in the church, and therefore I didn't feel part of the same experience in the same way as my family. So that was really the motivation for me. But I think, the important thing about faith, and I think this is true not just of the Christian faith but of other faiths, is the idea that when you are a person of faith, you acknowledge something bigger and more important and more powerful than yourself, than your own selfish needs and desires. And I think that element of faith, of which forgiveness and forgiveness of other people is a part, is the thing that I think unites people, whatever different faith they are.
Mr. Prime Minister, my name is Pete Hamill. My parents were Catholic immigrants from Belfast. Did the Northern Ireland experience teach you lessons that could be passed on to this wider world involving religious strife?
Yes, they did. And I think the most important lesson was really this, that when I first began the Northern Ireland peace process, people told me it was impossible because the Catholics and the Protestants completely hated each other and they would never learn to live with each other. And actually, by creating a process in which some of the hatred was taken out of the situation and people started to talk with each other and work with each other, we actually did create a situation where today you've got the Reverend Ian Paisley, a very strong Protestant, as you know.
That's a nice way to put it.
Sitting down with Martin McGuinness in government.
Bob Jones University, by the way.
Exactly. They love him in Greenville, South Carolina. They really do. Yeah.
But it's an amazing thing when you see him and Martin McGuinness, who is the main Republican, sitting down and working together.
A strong Protestant, to say the least. Nice way to put it. Mr. Prime Minister, thanks so much. The final question, the most important question of the morning.
You've been doing so well.
No, seriously.
Are you sure?
The world wants to know,
Just wrap it now.
Is it Man U or Chelsea on Saturday? Who wins?
Man U or Chelsea on Saturday? Man U have not been on such great form at the moment. So despite the fact I'm a big fan and friend of the managers, I think probably Chelsea will do a little bit better at the moment.
All right, very good. And are they going to scribble out that AIG symbol on the front of their jerseys?
I'm sorry, Mr. Prime Minister.
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? It shows you how the world is genuinely together.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, Mr. Prime Minister, a great honor to have you with us. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.